Hi, and thanks for joining this new 3CLogic Fireside chat. My name is Guillaume. I will be your host. Very excited to introduce you to Eros from CDW. Eros is the CDW ServiceNow Solutions Manager for both R&D and Pre-sales. Eros, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. Well, Happy New Year, first and foremost. And I know we're all happy to put 2020 behind us. So I'm really excited to have you open up our fireside chats here in the new year. Look, Eros, I'll just jump into it. A couple things, right? I know that at CDW, you guys have done some amazing things, or you did last year, in the education space. And I know that as much as we talk a lot about, or we did, about how the work environment has changed, obviously, people going to work from home, how that model might remain permanent and the impacts that's had with businesses. We don't talk a lot about the education space, except from the complaints we hear about parents because they're dealing with their kids and they're their teachers now, as well as obviously work. But if we look at education as a business, because in many ways it follows a lot of it's made up of the same components as most business organizations. I'm kind of curious. Can you weigh in a little bit about what are some of the things you've seen change in the education space that you think are going to potentially hold true for this new year, 2021?
Sure. So I think if you look at most, K through 12 systems or higher ed systems, there is so much potential for improvement there, and they tend to have really outdated systems. So if you're looking at kind of the technology that's in place today, it was all kind of put there before you had these kind of functions of user experience and mobility and omni-channel support. Those things were really not in the thought process when most of these educators implemented the systems that they have today around portals and self-service and those kinds of things. So we're really able to come in and transform the way that they do business, particularly the way that people do business with them.
Okay. Now, when you talk about people do business with them, are you talking about other organizations that facilitate the educational system, or are you talking about, customers in the form of parents and the kids they serve?
So parents and the kids they serve, right? So what we're seeing, for example, is we have a customer, they're a top 5 largest K through 12 system in the United States. So it's a massive amount of parents and students. And what you start to see is that if you start to modernize, one domino pushes another, and pretty soon you have to continue to modernize throughout the process end to end. So last year, when they started looking at the challenges around providing school virtual classes, right? Providing classes in a virtual environment. The first challenge they had is, hey, a lot of our students and parents, they don't have the actual equipment they need in order to attend, virtual schools. They don't have the laptops and things of that nature. So they bought thousands and thousands of Chromebooks and started distributing Chromebooks out to their teachers. Well, the second you distribute a Chromebook out, now you have a device that's out there that you have to be able to support and upgrade and keep up to date and service when it goes down and do warranty replacements on, and didn't have any system for that. So buying the Chromebooks and distributing to students was the easy part, right? The maintenance and everything that comes around that was the hard part. So we were able to implement ServiceNow specifically around kind of that workflow. So I have this Chromebook and I don't know how to use it, or something isn't working right. How can you help me?
Gotcha.
The second that happens, now you start looking at omni-channel support, because you go, okay, now they have this Chromebook, is phone and voice the only way that someone's going to come in and ask for support? Well, no, they're going to want email, they're going to want self-service. Self-service starts to be key here because it allows you to communicate back and forth and display information while using less resources on the back end. So then pretty soon you stand up a portal for the school so that they can do support on these Chromebooks. And then it's like, okay, well, now that we have this portal, what else can we do? And one thing leads to another, and pretty soon you're rolling out a complete end-to-end experience. It's really transformative if you look at how they're doing things now and how they did things 2 years ago.
And that's really interesting. I mean, the fact that one of the outcomes from the pandemic, as we start off this new year is the fact that all of a sudden, these huge universities, educational platforms and programs, they're being forced to digitally transform, as would, large corporations in the private sector. And you raise a perfectly good example. I mean, when you go to a virtual model and you start putting in the pieces to sustain that virtual environment, like sending the devices, you've now created another customer service stream that you have to maintain. Now, you talked about sort of the engagement layers. Talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, you think about students, you think about universities, you think about, okay, well, next generation, right? I mean, before it might have been, people are calling in, now it's web-based, now it might be SMS and social media. So what are you seeing in terms of the way in which these institutions are choosing to sort of communicate, with their end customer? And I'm referring to customers sort of as a blanket statement. It could mean the student body, or it can be the parents, because obviously the parents might want to know what their kids are doing or their grades or God knows what, right?
So what I think is interesting is the way that people communicate tends to be based around age groups more than anything else. So if you look at, a lot of the older parents, they're picking up a phone, they're calling. That's kind of how they want to do engagement. But if you look at, parents that are maybe in their 40s and 50s, they're very comfortable using email. That seems to be a good way for engagement for them. Now, if you start getting younger than that, then you're running into things like social media, text messaging, and mobile application access. Tends to be
Right.
things that are important for those younger demographics.
Yeah.
So for these educators, it's really important to be able to offer that kind of omnichannel experience where we'll engage with you the way that you want to be engaged.
Right. And that's interesting. I mean, we did, I know, obviously, we specialize in contact centers, voice solutions. We'll do it in the context of ServiceNow for today's topic. We did a deployment for a very large university in the United States. And for them, the struggle was when they expanded the pool or the audience that they serve, because now it's not just the internal IT departments or departments that they serve at an IT level on campus. And all of a sudden, now it's every single parent, geographically spread in some cases across the world. And now they're troubleshooting their Chromebooks and so on and so forth. One of their challenges was balancing the digital requests and automation and self-service, but also being able to escalate complex inquiries, when they need to actually reach and speak to an individual. So how do you manage for that? And then the other thing was also, contact tracing. They actually were doing their own on-campus every 3 days testing every student. So how do you then notify those individuals in a proactive way? And can you automate that process? Let's say using ServiceNow workflows, an automated call out, an automated SMS, an automated email, make sure that, hey, as soon as possible, let us notify you if you're positive and what should be the actions that you take. So your communication requirements are different too, because the messaging is not purely about what you would expect. It's not, here's your grade, here's your next assignment. It's also, here's information about the things that will facilitate your day in the life as a student or as a parent, right?
Yeah, contact tracing in particular, that's one that could be really unique, especially in K through 12, because typically in a business environment, when you're doing contact tracing, you're talking to an employee, what other employees have you been in contact with, and that's kind of the subset of the groups that you need to contact trace against. When you're dealing with a K through 12 educator and they do contact tracing, you have a student that's a minor and you can't talk to the student, you have to talk to their guardian, and that guardian lives in a house where they're the guardian of one student, but there's 3 other kids in the house that are actually connected to a different guardian. It might be a teacher and they might attend a different school. So, it really spiders out in a way that can be enormously complex. So before we can do effective contact tracing in that scenario, we had to build a household model that accounts for all of those things. So they knew who they had to call, who they were allowed to contact, and what other schools and facilities might be affected when a household could potentially be positive for the virus.
So what do you see as some of the biggest trends for this new year, specifically in the education space? I mean, you talked about, we both kind of alluded to the fact that they're being forced to digitally transform as much as the corporations themselves. But what do you see as some of the key themes that you think are going to carry beyond the pandemic, where technology has had an opportunity to really, provide an impact?
what I think is great is that sometimes you really do get positive things coming out of a negative experience, right? The pandemic was terrible for everyone, but I think that one of the positives is going to be that through this digital transformation that we're seeing happening, this is going to be better experiences for students and parents and teachers across all of the school systems. And that's really going to continue into this year. So what we're seeing is that now that the basic groundwork is in place and we're able to support people through omnichannel, and we have things like a portal where people can go to, now the next step is really how do we automate and create deflection scenarios so that we can do more with less. And maybe the word deflection has kind of a negative connotation, but really what you're talking about is how do I service more people faster and create better experiences. So when we're implementing things like virtual agents to allow a parent or a student to go get support on a problem, maybe in their own language, where there isn't anyone that speaks that language at a particular facility, right? We're creating a better experience, and we're allowing that facility, that educational system, to do more with less people, which is really important, right? And I think that's the trend that you're really going to see this year, is layering now the automation on top of those other pieces.
And let's be honest, I agree with you. I mean, deflection typically has a negative connotation, but in this case, I mean, we're actually referring to the optimization of resources. And if we talk about the impact of last year and presumably the ongoing effects of the pandemic, even in this new year, you know, universities were hit hard. I mean, you know, let's be honest, their revenue streams were impacted, whether it's sports and athletics, whether it's the fact that students couldn't even come on campus, you know, take your pick. So at some point, you know, it is imperative that those institutions have an opportunity to improve those resources so they can make do with less and still yet achieve more. And I think that's what you're alluding to. Is that right?
100%. And
Yeah.
you know, the other thing there is it really lets you concentrate kind of your human capital in the places where it can do the most good. So, you know, sometimes getting someone on the phone to say, hey, is my Chromebook shipped yet? Just isn't the best use of resources. But that person could be on the phone saying, hey, my kid can't get into this class right now. Can you help them attend school today? Maybe that's the best use of that human capital, right? And we're giving educators the ability to make those kinds of decisions.
And let's recognize that those customer service resources, while you can also virtualize them if and when you do need to reach someone, those IT resources, maybe fellow teachers, they could also be working from home, right? So they're not necessarily restricted to campus facilities, no more, no less than the students are today as well. So you do need to be able to pivot at that level as well. And that's where I think the omni-channel discussion and how you can enhance those engagement layers are important. But to your point, it's all based on establishing the initial framework. And it sounds like what you guys have done at CDW is really put that layer down and are just expanding that in a year. What are you excited about? Final question in 2021, ignoring the fact that 2020 is over. That's not a fair answer. What if you ignore that one? Your next favorite thing for 2021? What gets you up and gets you excited?
Gosh, I already said it once, but I'm going to say it again. Virtual agents keep getting smarter and smarter, and some of the things like what you guys are doing with semantic analysis now, or a virtual agent can tell by the way that they're interfacing either via voice or text that, hey, someone seems a little aggravated. Let me get them straight to a human being now, and kind of that kind of analysis of virtual agents getting more intelligent, not just kind of rationally, but emotional intelligence, and being able to figure out, hey, this person is angry, or this person is sad, and this person needs additional attention that only a human being can give. I think that's the next step that I'm really excited about.
Well, great. Well, I mean, we'll have plenty. I know from the viewpoint of 3CLogic, we'll have plenty more to show you in this year to that effect. And obviously in the context of what you guys are solving for over at CDW with ServiceNow. Look, I know it's a busy time for you. So happy New Year, happy 2021. Thanks for taking the time, Eros, for joining. For those of you who enjoyed today's topic, or if you have questions for Eros or myself, feel free to put some comments or some questions in the comment box below, and one of us will absolutely get in touch with you as quickly as possible. But for what it's worth, Eros, looking forward to touching base with you again in the future, hopefully one day soon in person. Otherwise, happy 2021.
Thank you. Happy 2021 to you.
All right, cheers, Eros.